Watch right now on the Front News project. Kadyrov's forces are being massively redeployed to the front. What is Ramzan planning? A new deadly weapon in the arsenal of the Russian Federation. How can we counter the GROM 1 bomb missile? And also, the enemy has entered the Dnipropetrovsk region. A bit of reality or a fake from Russian propaganda? Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch it right now. It's the fourth year of the full-scale war that Putin's Russia started on Ukrainian soil. The Ukrainian armed forces continue to heroically defend not only their homeland, but the entire civilized world from the aggression of Kremlin war criminals. Greetings! This is Front News. I'm Volodymyr Timoshenko. For the next 30 minutes, you get the truth about the war brought to you by our journalists from the hottest combat zones. So, are you ready? Then, let's get started. And we're starting right away with exclusive material. Russia is massively redeploying Kadyrov's forces to the Zaporizhia direction. They're being transported by trucks to temporarily occupied Mariupol. This is the largest detachment of Kadyrov's men recorded in Mariupol since 2023. What is behind this activity? What are Putin and Kadyrov planning? More on this coming up. Kadyrov forces have become more active on the front line. More than 15 trucks carrying Ramzan's thugs have arrived in Mariupol from Russia. They are planning to transfer them to the Zaporizhia region. This is the largest detachment of Kadyrov's troops recorded in Mariupol since 2023. Meanwhile, friendly drones have once again paid a visit to the Russians. Explosions thundered in Melitopol as well as in temporarily occupied Crimea. The occupiers even blocked traffic on the Crimean bridge, and helicopters took off from the Kacha airfield. SBU drones struck at locations where aircraft and air defense systems were stationed, ammunition depots, as well as at reconnaissance and strike drones. As a result of the explosions, a Pantsir S-1 self-propelled anti-aircraft missile and gun system and 3 helicopters were destroyed. The fire at the airfield could not be extinguished for several days.
And accordingly, aircraft from this airfield were actively providing cover for the main logistical components of the Russian army in occupied Crimea. This primarily concerns the Crimean bridge, and helicopters from this airfield were used to destroy Ukrainian ammunition depots.
Meanwhile, on the front line, Russian troops continued offensive actions in the Sivers direction, but made no progress. Ukrainian forces, on the other hand, advanced in 2 directions, in the north of Sumy region and in the area of Chasiv Yar.
The Ukrainian Defense Forces carried out a series of successful counterattacks in the Sumy region. We are talking about the tactical successes of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the area of Andriivka, and about the successful nature of the counterattacks by the Ukrainian Defense Forces between Yablonovo and Povshchina. At this point, we can say that the further advance of Russian occupation forces in the Sumy region has been halted. We are talking about the successful nature of the counterattacks by the Ukrainian Defense Forces, both in Chasiv Yar itself and accordingly to the southeast of the settlement. This is the area of Bilohora.
At the same time, Russia has concentrated 50,000 troops in the area of the city of Sumy. The occupiers' forces outnumber the Ukrainians in this direction by about 3 times.
The commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, Syrsky, stated that through the successful actions of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the Kursk and Sumy regions, they were once again able to block about 50,000 operational reserves of the Russian occupation army. Accordingly, legitimate questions arise regarding the reliability of the information voiced by Western media. Let me emphasize once again, we are primarily talking about the successful actions of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, which made it possible to block the operational reserves and prevent their redeployment directly to the main offensive directions. And these are, first and foremost, the Donetsk region, specifically the Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka directions.
Russia is also trying to expand aircraft production. A Finnish publication has released satellite images collected from mid-2024 to May 2025, which show that Russia has built or expanded at least 5 buildings at the Kazan aviation plant. At the same time, the publication notes that the plant is struggling to cope with modernization and the increased aircraft production plans.
First and foremost, this concerns the possibility of producing the Tuesday 160M and Tuesday 160N2. But throughout all of 2024, the plant delivered only 2 Tuesday 160 N2S and accordingly 2 Tuesday 160 milliseconds to the Russian aerospace forces. In other words, all statements by the Russian Federation about increasing the production of strategic bombers are nothing more than political information campaigns.
Additionally, Russia is refining its tactics for striking Ukraine. During the repulsion of another attack by the occupiers, I-16 pilot Maxim Ustimenko heroically died. According to experts, the enemy sometimes uses several types of munitions, which can result in damage to the aircraft and make further control impossible.
The change in tactics by the Russian occupiers consists of the so-called tandem missile launches. This is when 2 missiles are launched one after another with a short time interval between them. In other words, this tactic allows them to overcome the air defense system. It complicates the operation of air defense systems and their components. This is exactly what the F-16 is for.
Ukrainian soldiers are heroically fighting against the Russian occupiers, risking their lives every time. And now an analysis of the operational situation on the long-suffering Pokrovsk front line. The situation here too is traditionally tense to the limit. During the day, on the Pokrovsk front, the aggressor carried out 28 assault and offensive actions in the areas of the settlements of Ruski Yar, Razino, Mirnoya, Mirolubovka, Malinovka, Udakhnoye, Promen, Lizovka, Novosergeyevka, Alexeyevka, and in the directions of Vladimirovka and Novopavlovka. Boravka and Novopavlovka were subjected to airstrikes. At the same time, Ukrainian air defense intercepted the latest Russian bomb missile, the GROM-1, which the enemy was directing at the city of Dnipro. Its characteristics are truly unique, giving the Russian occupiers new opportunities to terrorize Ukrainians. Right now, we will tell you about this weapon and how the armed forces of Ukraine can counter it.
The city of Dnipro is now in the crosshairs of a Russian missile bomb. On the 28th of June, Russia tried to attack Dnipro with a guided aerial munition.
The explosion that was heard in the suburbs of Dnipro was the work of our air defense. I thank our Sky Defender for shooting down the newest GROM-1 missile bomb.
The GROM-E-1 glide bomb with a jet engine traveled more than 100 kilometers before it was shot down. As Ukrainian military experts note, this is not the first time such a weapon has been used.
These bombs have already been used before. They were first used against Kharkiv and Kupiansk. That was in the fall of 2024. They indiscriminately hit residential buildings and caused significant, heavy civilian casualties, tragically affecting many innocent lives.
The GROM-E-1 is a hybrid between a missile and a bomb and belongs to a small line of guided missile bomb weapons known as the GROM series. For example, there is also the GROM-E-2 munition. It does not have a jet engine, but it has a larger warhead. Moscow first showcased a member of the GROM family back in 2015. This means that by now, the GROM munitions could very well be in serial production.
The warhead of the GROM-2 weighs 480 kilograms, so it's a trade-off between warhead power and range. Either you have an engine for greater range, or you forego the engine for a larger warhead. The guidance system is the same as standard KABs, either inertial navigation system or orientation via satellite GPS.
The technical specifications of the GROM launched at Dnipro are as follows. Its weight is almost 600 kilograms. Of that, more than half, 315 kilograms, are allocated to the warhead. The maximum strike range under ideal conditions is 120 kilometers. The ideal conditions for release are a bomber altitude of 12 kilometers and a speed of 1600 kilometers per hour.
It will be difficult to shoot down the GROM in its engine-equipped version because they have high speed and are released from a great altitude. For example, they can simply fly past certain zones of anti-aircraft fire. If dropped from 12,000 meters, the bomb is descending the whole time. but by the time it drops to 3,000 meters, the altitude at which anti-aircraft artillery is effective, it may have already passed over the positions of the anti-aircraft guns.
When it comes to countering these kinds of GROMs, the situation is the same as with KABs. It's difficult to shoot down such munitions, but it's not impossible.
It's extremely hard to intercept them, but now sufficiently effective countermeasures are being developed, and currently countermeasures against KABs are being used quite effectively.
That's exactly how war evolves. For every enemy weapon, an antidote is eventually found. If standard means of protection don't work, Ukrainian engineers come up with and develop new ones. And now, about yet another genocide by Putin's Russia, a brutal shelling of Ukraine's Pearl by the Sea Odessa. 2 people killed and 14 wounded. These are the consequences of yet another treacherous night attack on the city. One enemy UAV crashed into a high-rise building. Naturally, a fire broke out. TSN journalist Olena Chernieva will report on the rescue operation and the consequences of yet another Russian war crime.
One building collapsed.
A Shahed drone flew straight into the building. After the explosion, a fire started. The flames engulfed 3 floors.
We just grabbed whatever we could and ran to save ourselves. There really wasn't any time to think. In the morning, we managed to grab our things and leave. Now we've come back to collect our belongings. Everything was blown out, thrown everywhere. It's just the devastation.
Gunfire started nearby. I went to the kitchen to close the window. As I stepped away, the glass immediately shattered. A flash, a burst of light, and the windows, the glass just flew everywhere.
Blown up.
Yes, it's terrifying. I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
There's an underground parking lot right under the building here. Many residents were hiding there, but unfortunately the residents of the apartment on the 9th floor where the drone hit directly were at home. A teacher from the Odessa Lyceum and her husband were killed.
A woman was screaming there, and after about 5 minutes, she went silent. Well, as I understand it, her door got jammed and she burned there or something like that. And through the flames, you could hear everything just silhouettes.
Toxic black smoke spread quickly through the building. Many people couldn't get out of their apartments.
People were trapped in their apartments, and it was very difficult to reach them because of the heavy smoke and extremely high temperatures. Some residents signaled to the rescuers using flashlights from their apartments. This helped them understand where to search.
Rescuers freed 5 residents, including a 3-year-old child. The search operation continued until morning. No more people were found in the blocked apartments. In the morning, residents began returning to their homes, but only to collect their belongings. After all, the damaged entrance is currently uninhabitable. There is no electricity or water anywhere in the building.
I don't know where we will stay. Everything is wet, there's no light, it's just terrible in there. I don't know where we will live. There are simply no words. But we are alive. The children didn't hear it, and that's the most important thing.
The apartment spanning 3 floors was completely destroyed by fire and the blast wave. The lower floors are flooded with water, doors and windows have been blown out. The final damage is still being assessed. Experts need to determine how badly the building structure has been affected. 6 injured people remain in hospitals. 2 adults and a child are in serious condition.
And now, an analysis of the situation on the Lyman front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill and maim here as well. On the Lyman front, the enemy attacked 19 times, trying to advance in the areas of the settlements of Kopanki, Nadezhda, Redkodub, Grekovka, Torske, and in the Serebryansky forestry towards Novosergeyevka, Olgovo, Novi Mir, Srednaye, and Shandragilov. 3 clashes are still ongoing. Yes, the terrorists of Putin's army are deliberately hunting and killing Ukrainian civilians in the frontline regions, including with the help of FPV drones. Even the United Nations has finally seen and documented this in its report. At the same time, the production of these deadly UAVs in Russia has recently increased sharply. We will tell you in more detail about this horrific terror that Russian occupiers inflict on peaceful Ukrainians every day.
Russia has begun rapidly developing its own drone manufacturing industry. A sharp surge was already recorded this spring and at the beginning of summer. The reason for this surge is a dramatic increase in orders from the Russian defense industrial complex. According to data from the Center for Macroeconomic Analysis, in May alone, production volumes grew by almost 17% compared to April. In Russia, there is widespread enthusiasm for funding small startups that produce UAVs.
Who did they think they were trying to intimidate? Direct descendants of the people who bravely took control of Paris in the year 1815 and subsequently Berlin in 1945.
In July, a record monthly figure of 2.6% was recorded, the highest since July 2020.
It is too early to speak of a fully formed growth trend. According to our estimates, about two-thirds of the growth in May was due to a sharp surge in output in sectors dominated by defense industry products, while the remaining increase was driven by a spike in production in the non-ferrous metallurgy sector.
Against this backdrop, the intensification of strikes on Ukrainian territory is particularly telling. The terrorist state is using both its own developments and Iranian Shah drones assembled at Russian facilities.
What geraniums are blooming in Odessa above the headquarters? They tear to shreds the Bandera scum. That's an answer better than 1,000 words.
Iran will most likely no longer be able to help Putin with attack drones after strikes by Israel and the US. But it has already transferred the necessary technology to Moscow, and Russia has long since established mass production of these drones domestically.
The drones that later go on to kill people are assembled by people just like us. They attach the warhead to the body, prepare presentations for their superiors, and develop production plans.
In the past 2 years, a record number of new companies involved in aircraft manufacturing have been launched more than at any other time in history. Few people know this, but many of these bloody startups disguise themselves as Russian social projects. Alabuga is the main factory producing the Shahed 136 drone, or Geran 2, as it is called in Russia.
Well, even if that's the case, I don't care what they're called, the beautiful Arabic word Shahed or the beautiful Russian word Geran, as long as it flies and falls on the heads of The
main office of the company and the drone production facility are located on the Alabuga premises.
The factory has significantly and extensively expanded the production of Iranian-designed strike and reconnaissance drones, utilizing a considerable number of Chinese components and actively recruiting a very young, low-skilled workforce primarily from Russian teenagers and African women.
Of course, the Russian embassy denied the use of Nigerian girls as slave labor in drone assembly. North Korea has also followed in the footsteps of the Africans. It is ready to send workers to the Russian factory to gain experience. China's role in Alabuga is also significant. There is a logistics complex on the premises. It is a direct railway connection between Russia and China, designed to transport up to 100,000 containers per year.
Now, many students, having seen the colorful advertisements, are going to enroll at Alabuga Polytech College. They have no idea that instead of receiving a quality education and working in high-tech manufacturing, they will face executions, digging trenches, and worst of all, assembling deadly Shahed kamikaze drones.
For Russia, this is not only a way to replenish military stockpiles, but also a profitable business and a legitimate target for the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian defenders have previously reported successful strikes on the strike drone factory in Tatarstan. Ukrainian UAVs traveled more than 1,000 kilometers from the border and managed to hit the factory in the Yelabuga district. But Alabuga is not the only one. Sites producing Shahed UAVs are scattered all across Russia. The fight should not be limited to physical strikes, which is why Zelensky has imposed sanctions on Russian companies involved in the production of drones and their components.
Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia has launched a colossal number of Shahed strike drones at Ukraine, 28,743. Just in June of this year, in less than a month, their number reached 2,736 units.
In addition to Shaheds, the Kremlin is increasingly using strike FPV drones for targeted attacks on Ukraine's civilian population.
These actions violated the principles of distinction and precaution enshrined in international humanitarian law. Some incidents may be equated to the deliberate targeting of civilians, which constitutes a war crime.
Intelligence reports that Russia intends to produce 2 million FPV drones during the year 2025. The existence of this deadly business in Russia is entirely dependent on foreign supplies. Alabuga is on the sanctions list of both the United States and the European Union. If China were to ban the supply of just one crucial component to Russia, the entire drone industry in Russia would collapse. But China doesn't want to lose money, especially when there's a steady income and a very lucrative client. Even though its hands are already stained with blood up to the elbows and beyond.
And now, let's move to the Kramatorsk and Toretsk sectors of the front. The bloody rampage of the enemy armies continues here as well. In the Kramatorsk direction, the defense forces stopped 2 enemy attempts to advance in the area of Chasiv Yar. The enemy also tried 6 times to break through our defenses in the Toretsk direction, in the areas of Dakhne, Toretsk and Yablonivka. One of these clashes is still ongoing. But there is also positive news that will definitely help Ukraine in its fight against the Russian terrorists. Ukraine is in the final stages of developing its own guided aerial bombs. We will tell you when they will become widely available to our defenders and what their capabilities are in countering enemy aggression.
While Russian guided aerial bombs keep falling on Ukrainian cities, wiping them off the map, Ukraine is preparing its own response. For the first time since the start of the full-scale war, Ukrainian engineers have created their own version of a glide bomb. A bomb capable of flying dozens of kilometers and striking its target with precision. The Ukrainian counterpart to the Russian UMPK is already flying and hitting targets at a distance of 60 kilometers. This is a new development by the Honey Badger Design Bureau. They took an ordinary high-explosive aerial bomb and turned it into a guided one, with navigation wings and a precise guidance module. And all of this is made in Ukraine.
The planning and control module for the 500-kilogram bomb is an in-house development. The specially designed wings are easy to attach to the bomb. There are no issues with connecting it, it only takes a few minutes. Domestic enterprises have been involved in the manufacturing process. The navigation module is domestically produced. However, there is now a decision to test a new development from one of the leading French companies on our product, but there are still some components that we are forced to import from abroad.
Testing is already underway. The bombs are dropped from frontline Su-24S in level flight. Their task is to reach targets dozens of kilometers away and hit them precisely. Currently, the range is 60 kilometers. The goal is to reach 80 and in the future up to a full 100 kilometers when dropped from an altitude of 10 kilometers. But there are some problems, and they are not technical but financial.
We are looking for any opportunity, because the cost of one such unit is almost 1,200,000 hryvnias, or about $25,000. In fact, at this point, funding is almost the main limiting factor preventing the completion of work on this project in its current version before the start of mass production of the domestic Ukrainian glide bomb.
This thing is more suitable for destroying defensive targets like fortifications, stationary objects, things like trenches, or, I don't know, large permanent structures, a single big building. So for the advancing side, using this weapon is really great. So they see our structures, our trenches, launch a couple dozen, maybe 3 dozen bombs. They destroy these structures and gain an advantage. Russia advances in small groups, in small parties, and it's harder to attack them. So we can only attack stationary targets like headquarters or places where the Russian command is located. But again, at what distance from the front line? So first you have to find it, then strike. So to say that it will radically change the situation, well, you can't, but, well, it will definitely cause extra losses for the Russian army. But again, it needs to be done on a massive scale. Massive, I don't know, this weapon needs to be produced by the hundreds every day.
Meanwhile, there's hysteria in Russia. After the first footage of the Ukrainian UAV appeared, pro-Kremlin channels started to openly panic.
They stole it, they've started using their own guided aerial bombs. The first footage of such munitions being dropped has been published. For those who didn't get it, how bad it is that our technology with FABs, this will seriously complicate the situation at the front, just as we once complicated it.
The war requires hundreds of such bombs every day. Western models like the JDAM ER AASM Hammer and GBU-39B do not cover the entire demand. That is precisely why launching mass production of our own guided aerial bomb is vital. Especially since, even at the testing stage, the Ukrainian bomb is already cheaper than its Western counterparts, which means it is faster and more accessible.
And now, an analysis of the operational situation on the Novopavlivka sector of the front. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. On the Novopavlivka direction, our defenders have repelled 8 enemy attacks in the areas of the settlements of Mern, Zaporizhia, Fedorivka, Shevchenko, Vezele, Novopil, and Rivnopil. 3 more clashes are still ongoing. Ukraine is trying to create its own air shield and find effective means to counter Russia's Shahid drone terror. In just the first 20 days of June, Russia has launched more than 3,500 attack drones at Ukraine. The enemy is actively scaling up the production of deadly Iranian UAVs and will increase both the number and intensity of attacks on Ukrainian cities. Experts warn that there is truly little time left to find protection. The good news is that Ukrainians can now produce anti-Shahed weapons themselves. What these weapons might be and whether there is a real chance to protect our skies in time was investigated by TSN journalist Maria Vasilyeva.
Russian attacks on major Ukrainian cities in June have become noticeably more terrifying. The Russians have changed their tactics, and now, instead of scattered strikes across almost all of Ukraine, they choose one or two cities and direct hundreds of Shaheds and dozens of missiles there, overloading the air defense system.
They started to concentrate.
Translation from video, they began to concentrate the entire mass of what they launch on a few targets. And that's exactly why we see the situation we have now. If the enemy has such a large number of means, then no matter how good the air defense is, no matter how advanced the system, it will never be 100% effective.
The defensive methods that were used until recently are losing their effectiveness. Shags are becoming harder to neutralize with electronic warfare systems. In most cases, they fly at an altitude of about 2 kilometers, and mobile fire groups can no longer reach them with machine gun bursts. Attack drones dive onto a specific target from a great height, swarming all at once. Things will only get worse, and there is almost no time left, warns military communications specialist Serhiy Flesh without mincing words.
Translation from the video. As you know, I'm an optimist and only sound the alarm in the most extreme cases. With this kind of momentum, Russia will destroy our entire country with Shaheds. They have massively scaled up production and are continuing to do so. If we don't start acting right now, our infrastructure, industry and defense facilities are finished.
According to the military, the main means of countering these should have been interceptor drones, the mass production of which was needed yesterday. Many companies are working on their development, and some are already successfully hunting down Russian reconnaissance UAVs. But in addition to the Zala, Lancet and Varlan, there are also the first down Shahids. However, it is precisely scaling up that is always a bottleneck for the Ukrainian defense industry. The state apparatus is responding far too slowly.
Scaling up these means, because there aren't that many of these solutions. For now, there are only one or two. One has already been almost fully contracted. It has proven itself very well, and I think that in the shortest possible time, more will be produced and added 100%. It will take a month or two at most, because now everyone understands what is needed and how this system should look, since there is already one like it.
One of the advantages of anti-aircraft drones is their price. Compared to the Shahed, an interceptor drone can cost several orders of magnitude less.
The maximum price of a system that can take down a Shahed will not exceed $5,000. In some cases, it could be even less once mass production begins. The price of a Shahed is around $50,000 and up, reaching as high as $250,000. It's important to understand that an anti-aircraft drone will be significantly more expensive than an FPV drone, but it's also necessary to be able to produce these systems in quantities of hundreds per day. And why are anti-aircraft drones important for Ukraine right now? Because we will be able to produce them ourselves. And when we talk about the need for anti-aircraft drones, it's about the situation where the enemy starts producing so many Shaheds that our traditional means are no longer sufficient.
Among the drawbacks of anti-aircraft drones are the time required to train operators and the need to organize a coordinated control system. The main problem, according to Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi, is the extremely small number of radars. These Israeli radar systems are currently helping to detect enemy drones. However, thousands of them are needed, the commander admits. Just recently, the Netherlands agreed to promptly supply 100 of these radar systems. Another promising direction for creating an air shield, according to Syrskyi, is light aircraft.
To launch an F-16, 1 hour of flight costs $40,000 to $50,000. That includes maintenance, spare parts, fuel and everything else. When we talk about a light aircraft, the plane itself costs $60,000 to $70,000. What is the advantage of light aircraft compared, for example, to anti-aircraft drones, which are all-weather? The speed is much higher. If we compare again with an anti-aircraft drone, the drone goes 120, well, at best 140 kilometers per hour, but a plane can fly at 400 or even 500.
A major advantage of anti-aircraft drones and light aircraft is that Shaheds can be shot down on approach, whereas over cities, even when shot down, they still cause significant destruction. But the big drawback is the time lost. Already now in Alabuga, they are developing technologies for Shahids to evade interceptor drones, which in Ukraine are still being produced as boutique weaponry. Whether Ukraine can technologically pull ahead of the Russians in this deadly race literally determines our survival.
That's all for today. But very soon on Front News there will be new unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.